I'm not going to. I'll send staff to do that. He's not going to, but to me, if he was wanting to, he'd come begging to us. But here's the problem. It sums it up very simply like this. Just 19 minutes after noon on Inauguration Day 2017, the Washington Post ran the headline, "The campaign to impeach the president has begun." Mark Zadd, who would later become the attorney for the infamous whistleblower, tweeted in January 2017, "The coup has started. The impeachment will follow ultimately." And in May of this year, Al Green says if we don't impeach the president, he'll get re-elected. If you want to know what's $20 years ago. What a disgrace to this committee. To have the committee of impeachment simply take from other entities and rubber stamp it. You see, why do the things that I say matter about fact witnesses and actually hearings and actually having this a due process? Because, by the way, just a couple of months ago, the Democrats got all sort of dressed up, if you would, and says, we're going to have due process protection for the president and good fairness throughout this. This is the only committee in which the president would even have a possibility. But no offense to you, the law professors. The president has nothing to ask you. You're not going to provide anything he can't read. And his attorneys have nothing else. Put witnesses in here that they can be fact witnesses who can be actually cross-examined. That's fairness, and every attorney on this panel knows that. This is a sham. But what I also see here is quotes like this. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties or imposed by another. Such an impeachment will produce divisiveness, bitterness in politics for years to come and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. The American people are watching. They will not forget. You have the votes. You may have the muscle, but you do not have the legitimacy of a national consensus or of a constitutional imperative. The partisan coup d'etat will go down in infamy in the history of the nation. How about this one? I think the key point is that the Republicans are still running a railroad job with no attempt at fair procedure. And today, when the Democrats offered amendments, offered motions to say we should first discuss and adopt standards so that we know we're dealing with standards for impeachment that was voted down or ruled out of order. When we say the important thing is to start looking at the question before we simply have a vote with no real inquiry first, that was voted down and ruled out of order. So frankly, the whole question of what material should be released and what is secondary, but that's all we discussed. The essential question, and here it is, which is to set up a fair process as to whether the country put this country through an impeachment proceeding. That was ruled out of order. The Republicans refused to let us discuss it. Those are all Chairman Nadler before he was chairman. I guess 20 years makes a difference. This is an interesting time. We're having a factless impeachment. You just heard a one-sided presentation of facts about this president. Today we will present the other side, which it gets so conveniently left out. Remember, fairness does dictate that, but maybe not here, because we're not scheduling anything else. I have a Democratic majority who has poll tested what they think they ought to call what the president they think he did. Wow, that's not following the facts. We have just a deep-seated hatred of a man who came to the White House and did what he said he was going to do. The most amazing question I got in the first 3 months of this gentleman's presidency from reporters was this: can you believe he's putting forward those ideas? I said, yes, he ran on them. He told the truth, and he did what he said. The problem here today is this will also be one of the first impeachments. The chairman mentioned there was two of them, one that before he resigned before, and then one in Clinton, in which the facts, even by Democrats and Republicans, were not really disputed. And this one, they're not only disputed, they're contradicted of each other. There are no set facts here. In fact, there's not anything that presents an impeachment here, except a president carrying out his job in the way the Constitution saw that he sees fit to do it. This is where we're at today. So the interesting thing that I come to with most everybody here is this may be a new time, a new place, and we may be all scrubbed up and looking pretty for impeachment. But this is not an impeachment. This is just a simple railroad job. And today's is a waste of time, because this is where we're at. So I close today with this. It didn't start with Mueller. It didn't start with a phone call. You know where this started? It started with tears in Brooklyn in November 2016, when an election was lost. So we are here, no plan, no fact witnesses, simply being a rubber stamp for what we have. But hey, we got law professors here. What a start of a party. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I have a motion under Clause 2, Rule 11.
The gentleman was recognized for the purpose of an opening statement, not for the purpose of making a motion.
I yield back and now ask for recognition for a motion under Clause 2, Rule 11.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Clause 2 of Rule 11, I move to require the attendance and testimony of Chairman Schiff before this committee and transmit this letter accordingly.
For what purpose does the gentlelady seek recognition?
Move to table the motion.
Motion to table is made and not debatable. All in favor of the motion to table say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The motion to table is agreed to.
Recorded vote.
The recorded vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will call the roll.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
You're not recognized for parliamentary inquiry at this time. There's a vote in process.
Just a reminder, any no votes that you don't want Chairman Schiff coming, correct?
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Nadler.
Aye.
Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren.
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Ms. Jackson-Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Jackson-Lee votes aye. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen votes aye. Mr. Johnson of Georgia. Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes aye. Mr. Deutsch. Mr. Deutsch votes aye. Ms. Bass. Mr. Richmond.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond votes yes. Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries votes aye. Mr. Cicilline.
Aye.
Mr. Cicilline votes aye. Mr. Swalwell.
Yes.
Mr. Swalwell votes yes. Mr. Liu.
Aye.
Mr. Liu votes aye. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Ms. Jayapal.
Aye.
Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Ms. Demings.
Aye.
Ms. Demings votes aye. Mr. Correa.
Aye.
Mr. Correa votes aye. Ms. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Ms. Garcia.
Aye.
Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Neguse.
Aye.
Mr. Neguse votes aye. Ms. McBath.
Aye.
Ms. McBath votes aye. Mr. Stanton.
Aye.
Mr. Stanton votes aye. Ms. Dean.
Aye.
Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. Mucarsel-Powell.
Aye.
Ms. Mucarsel-Powell votes aye. Ms. Escobar.
Aye.
Ms. Escobar votes aye. Mr. Collins.
No.
Mr. Collins votes no. Mr. Sensenbrenner? No. Mr. Sensenbrenner votes no. Mr. Shabbat? No. Mr. Shabbat votes no. Mr. Gomert? No. Mr. Gomert votes no. Mr. Jordan? No. Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Buck? No. Mr. Buck votes no. Mr. Ratcliffe? No. Mr. Ratcliffe votes no. Ms. Roby? No. Ms. Roby votes no. Mr. Gates? No. Mr. Gates votes no. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana? No. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock?
No.
Mr. McClintock votes no. Ms. Lesko?
No.
Ms. Lesko votes no. Mr. Reschenthaler?
No.
Mr. Reschenthaler votes no. Mr. Klein?
No.
Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Armstrong?
No.
Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Stubbe?
No.
Mr. Stubbe votes.
Thanks, Mike. Well, first, I wanted to thank my colleagues for the opportunity to serve as the House Republican Conference Chair. I have prioritized listening to all members of our Republican Conference, and my focus is on unity because that's what the American people and that's what our voters deserve. I also want to thank this leadership team. I look forward to working with them in partnership, shoulder to shoulder, to make sure that we are fighting on behalf of hardworking Americans. I also want to thank President Trump for his support. He is a critical part of our Republican team. And of course, most importantly, I want to thank the voters of New York's 21st Congressional District, whom I'm honored to represent each and every day and fight for them. The American people are suffering under the far-left radical socialist policies of President Joe Biden and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. In just over 100 days, we have an economic crisis, we have a border crisis, and we have a national security crisis. The economic crisis, we see the worst jobs report in over 20 years. Unemployment is up, small businesses are struggling to hire workers, and Speaker Pelosi and Joe Biden's solution to that is to pay people to stay out of work rather than incentivizing people to get back to work. As Republicans, we are fighting to reopen the economy, to create jobs. We are fighting against the trillions of dollars of tax increases and the trillions of dollars of reckless spending. The border crisis. This is not only a national security and homeland security crisis, this is a humanitarian crisis. We see historic concerning numbers when it comes to human trafficking on the border, when it comes to drug trafficking on the border. Every single state in this nation is a border state and feels that impact. At home in my district, the northern border is being impacted because Border Patrol officers are being transferred from the northern border to the southern border. Republicans stand for border security. And of course, the national security crisis. We are seeing our strongest ally, Israel, under attack. And we have seen Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi not step up to stand by and support Israel and prioritize outreach to adversaries like China and Iran. So I'm very excited for this opportunity. We are unified, working as one team, and the American people know that the stakes are incredibly high. We are going to fight for them each and every day against the destructive, radical, far-left socialist agenda of President Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi that's destroying America. And I'll go to the first question from the New York Post. Julie.
You kind of came under fire from some conservatives that are concerned about your record. Are you concerned about, I know unifying your message, but given those criticisms going into your the vote, I guess how do you kind of overcome that?
Listen, the Republican Party is a Big Ten party, and my district is the story of the growth of the Republican Party. My district voted for President Obama by double digits, and it voted for President Trump and myself by double digits. We have worked to grow the Republican Party, and Nancy Pelosi has her slimmest majority in a generation. We are going on offense and are going to win back the majority in 2022. This is about being unified. I'm a proud conservative Republican, and I will fight for the Republican conference.
But how can you be unified?
Scott.
Is President Trump the leader of the Republican Party?
I believe that voters determine the leader of the Republican Party, and President Trump is the leader that they look to. I support President Trump. Voters support President Trump. He is an important voice in our Republican Party, and we look forward to working with him.
But how can you be unified so long as you have some members who support the former president and some who don't?
We are unified, and I look to the voters across America. Republican voters are unified in their support and their desire to work with President Trump, and we are unified as Republicans. As I said, this is the slimmest majority that Nancy Pelosi has in a generation. We picked up a number of seats, defied expectations. We're going on offense, and we're going to win on the issues because people are understanding that Joe Biden's pledge of bipartisanship, he has broken that pledge since his first day in office. There has been no bipartisan outreach. It has been party line, partisan, far-left votes, and the American people are seeing the disastrous results in the border crisis, the economic crisis, the national security crisis, and more. The American people are hurting, and Republicans are going to fight for them.
Upon hearing that Chip Roy
Your message, but given those criticisms going into your the vote, I guess how do you kind of overcome that?
Listen, the Republican Party is a Big Ten party, and my district is the story of the growth of the Republican Party. My district voted for President Obama by double digits, and it voted for President Trump and myself by double digits. We have worked to grow the Republican Party, and Nancy Pelosi has her slimmest majority in a generation. We are going on offense and are going to win back the majority in 2022. This is about being unified. I'm a proud conservative Republican, and I will fight for the Republican conference.
But how can you be unified?
Scott.
How can you...
Is President Trump the leader of the Republican Party?
I believe that voters determine the leader of the Republican Party, and President Trump is the leader that they look to. I support President Trump. Voters support President Trump. He is an important voice in our Republican Party, and we look forward to working with him.
But how can you be unified so long as you have some members who support the former president and some who don't?
We are unified, and I look to the voters across America. Republican voters are unified in their support and their desire to work with President Trump, and we are unified as Republicans. As I said, this is the slimmest majority that Nancy Pelosi has in a generation. We picked up a number of seats, defied expectations. We're going on offense, and we're going to win on the issues because people are understanding that Joe Biden's pledge of bipartisanship, he has broken that pledge since his first day in office. There has been no bipartisan outreach. It has been party line, partisan, far-left votes, and the American people are seeing the disastrous results in the border crisis, the economic crisis, the national security crisis, and more. The American people are hurting, and Republicans are going to fight for them.
Upon hearing that Chip Roy was getting in the race, President Trump put out a statement last night suggesting that he should be challenged. Do you agree with that?
Listen, competition is good in America. We are the United States of America. We should have a discussion of ideas. I welcome the competition. I'm honored for the support. We are working as one team. My job as House Republican Conference Chair, we are focused on putting forth policies and communicating them to the American people to beat Democrats, and we are going to win the majority in 2022 as one team. Yes.
Is there a place in the party for vocal Trump critics like Liz Cheney, like Adam Kinzinger?
Liz Cheney is a part of this conference. Adam Kinzinger is a part of this conference. They were elected and sent here by the people in their district. They are part of this Republican conference. We are unified in working with President Trump. My job representing our Republican members, the vast majority of you look forward to working with President Trump. Yes.
Last question. Have you talked to Liz Cheney since the events of this week?
I have not. Thank you, everybody.
All right, one last thing. I want to wish our policy chair right here happy birthday. Palmer, it's his birthday today, and so do you all remember the birthday song? Here we go. This is your you.